Hello and greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Business Podcast. Today we're joined by Quin, who's the CEO at Foodstuffs North Island. How are you, Chris?
Good morning. Look, I don't know how to answer the how are we question in these times, so we'll go with the Kiwi answer. I'm good.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, these are really unprecedented times in which we're operating. And when I looked around the organisations in New Zealand that are actually busy and able to sort of operate, it's such a varied landscape. But Foodstuffs is an organisation that's not only had to keep operating, but you've actually had to scale up because your workload seems to have increased, quite dramatically. What does that actually look like for you at the moment?
So look, if you map back through 5 weeks now since 28th of February, and the very first case of COVID-19 was announced in New Zealand, which happened early Friday evening. And literally, I was sitting outside on the deck with a couple of friends, started to see the phone go off. Texts from owners, photos coming in, people going, what the hell? And that moment kicked off, the first of three phases that we see in this whole event. And the phase we had been in and still are in to some extent is demand overload. And just to sort of give it some capacity, we're talking 2.5 to 3 times as much volume flowing through supply chain. And quite often over double the amount of shopping being done through our retail network. So that gives it some dimension. And that's, it has been a modern miracle that our team have somehow managed to produce that. And that our systems, because, we're like every business now, every core process is a digital process. It would have been a disaster to have one of those melt down during this, and it just hasn't happened, which is a tribute to, the infrastructure that the team has built and the infrastructure the country lives on a little bit, actually. But so we've been in demand overload for quite some time. That has led to a whole pile of operating methodologies, a reset of our strategy. We've sort of said, look, strategy for 2020 has now become COVID-19, and we've reset all of our priorities. And, we have a very good crisis management process because New Zealand is good at that, and we've matured at the way we do that for unfortunate reasons, but it's just real for a lot of businesses. Crisis management works for something that lasts a day or a week, a flood, a fire, an earthquake, those sort of events. This event is not like that. This is a reset of your business for the foreseeable future. So that's the approach we've taken, and we're in that mode. And of course, I roughly have 1,600 people employed direct in the support centre. Then we have another 24,000 people employed in stores. For our support centre, we've done the right thing. We're a big New Zealand employer. We've got to get people home and isolated. We did that and did it pretty bloody well, and I'm proud of our tech team for that. We've also got to implement a whole lot of physical distancing and safety methods of operating very fast. So
how have you done that? How have you approached that, and how have you even worked out what you need to do and what's appropriate when you're needing to move at such pace?
Yeah, look, and one of the things you learn very quickly during this is, no one wrote a book about this before. There's not a manual you can pull off the shelf. So it's being developed on the fly. And what I think it's really important for leaders to do while that is going on is understand the principles. We know enough about the science of this disease to go, it's effectively transmitted by human contact or by, the disease being in liquid in the air or spat or breathed or, sneezed on. And so if you just take that principle, then apply it to every one of your processes and go, okay, how do I change that process to protect as much as possible against that transmission? So that's, government have been really good in terms of pragmatic and direct engagement. I've never had so much contact with people that you only see on the TV. Also, I think our attitude has got to be, there's no point in running around and demanding answers. We need to get the principles and then take accountability for running our business the best way we can in the face of that. And that's what we're doing.
And so, I mean, what does that government engagement look like at this stage? I mean, who are you talking to within government, and how does that actually work out practically?
Yeah, so it's heads of key departments. So NPI, because of the whole food safety and what that means in this environment. It's commerce in terms of how do we keep commerce going where we must keep it going. And then it's, we've been privileged to have an ability to give some direct feedback into Cabinet so that what they're dealing with is relatively real and relatively in touch with real life. I think right now, one of the most useful things they can understand is what are New Zealanders doing day to day? How are they shopping? What are they worried about? And I think it's a credit to them that you've seen some very clear messages, even from the Prime Minister in her briefings, about shopping normally, about being calm, about being kind. We're very connected in terms of those things. It's not a time for any political debate. It's a time for agreed action.
Yep. And how quickly are you able to, get data and information through to them? What data are you seeing? What are you seeing at the moment? You talked about, the amount of increase in terms of, product and so on. Do you have a clear understanding on, what those triggers are? Are people still sort of stocking up? Is that kind of the challenge? And of course, those that are wanting food prepared for them so they can come and pick it up or have it delivered and so on.
So look, we're in day 3 of Alert Level 4. The pattern for Alert Level 4 is still establishing. People ask me what's going to happen tomorrow, and the answer I give is stuff. Stuff will happen tomorrow. Don't know what stuff yet, but it will happen. So from a pure data point of view, we're a business that conducts, over a million shopping transactions a day. We are shifting about 1 million cartons of product a day through a supply chain. So the whole process of forecasting and requiring from suppliers what comes in, the lining up of transport and resource to unload a truck so it goes straight to shelf in a DC and then is able to be picked to be assembled to a store load. The store forecasting and putting in their orders, us managing those orders. What happens, for example, is our individual stores go, well, I'd love to have all these things. We go, we've only got that much stuff. Our job is to distribute it as equally as possible across the community. So there's a lot of algorithms being written fast to go, what stock on hand have we got per store against sales rate? How does that modify the orders all the stores are placing so that we do the best job of distributing essentials as evenly as possible? So that's all, as much as we've got 700 or 800 people physically picking, there's also another crew of 50 to 60 who are doing the algorithms and the real-time stuff to manage as best the flow of that picking to get the best customer result we can. So that leads to doing things like going, right now, we're not going to pick anything outside of the core essentials products. We changed the system, so we're a SAP enterprise system user. And then we're partway through and we have all but one of our warehouses moved over to a JDA warehouse management system. And then we've got one warehouse running on an old system. So there's a bit of juggling going on there, but that's what the clever folks do for us every day. We had some transport management optimization built in the last 6 months. So we're able to do sign on glass and live indication to stores of where a truck is and when it will arrive and what is on that truck. So those are all things that really help with a flow through to shelf as efficiently as possible. But the system is dealing with over twice the volume being drained out of store every day and over 3 times the volume being moved through supply chain to get to store. And that's the fundamental problem. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no. So what does that what does that lead to? You've got to look for additional people. You've got to get people upskilled. I mean, this is a sort of not something you could possibly have planned for in the business in really any way, shape or form. So how are you actually addressing those things?
Yeah, so the business as a whole since 28th of February has hired just over 1,000 new people. Most of those have gone into store, and the reason for that is it's about a 5-week sprint time from hiring someone to having them being safely and productively usable in a warehouse. Because the role in the warehouse is data driven. They wear a headset. It is voice activated, picking controlled. You have to be able to do that safely. One of the absolute miracles of the last 5 weeks with the volume we're moving through is we've had one lost time injury where a gentleman banged his head on a bar in the racking. Apart from that, we've had no accidents, which is just incredible when I think about the busyness. We get to a point of capacity. I've been in our DCs plenty of times, and you physically look at it and go, I can't squeeze another 10 people working in here because it will cause accidents if we do. So we've maxed our physical pit. We've brought on additional fleet and trucking operations to move stuff to store. But at the moment, our truck fleet has got more capacity than our picking fleet. So in terms of balance, that's where we are.
And how many people? Oh, sorry. How many people do you have in those DCs, in those distribution centres? What sort of scale are they, and where are they?
It's around 1,000 people. So for us, there are 5 sites in Auckland, 1 in Rotorua, 2 in Palmerston North.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the sort of scale. Some of them are what we call ambient, so it's just products at room temperature. Then we have chilled and frozen, so people working at -4 or -24 degrees. The conversations in the -24 degrees are short and to the point. And the heroes of this moment have been those folks who are turning up 6 days a week for 10+ hour shifts. And they, what's incredible is they have a real sense of duty. They are, I talk to them and they're saying, look, we think New Zealand needs us to do this job, boss. And we've been in there thanking them, shouting lunches, doing all the things we should do. But you stand back and go, thank God they've got the spirit they have.
And walk us through the realities from the health and safety perspectives, and keeping your team protected from COVID-19, because I think we're still learning what it even looks like to be safe, but you've had to just keep going.
Yeah, look, the best, again, come back to it. You've got to base it on pragmatism and principles. So the very clear best principle I keep hearing is from Susie Wells, who's saying, look, if you act like you've got it and then behave in a way that says I've got it, that is the smartest thing to do. So we just keep reinforcing this to our team all the time. Imagine that disease was on your hands right now. What would you do different? And the answer is you would wash with hot running water and soap as often as you could. You would sanitize as often as you could. You would not touch your face, ears, nose or mouth. And that's, just as a normal person, you go, that's one of the hardest things to change. We'll have mannerisms where we do that. And 2 meters of social distancing. They are the things that, it sounds so nannerish and so it's anti our society, but it is the critical thing to do. So one of the pieces of data I'm using right now for stores, for example, is what's the average size of basket in shopping? Because what we do not want is people coming into Foursquare for an ice cream, for God's sake. That is an unnecessary trip and contact. If someone's coming in and yesterday we saw our average basket size lift about 30% because people are getting it about assemble your shopping, make it a single mission, send one person, go and get a job done efficiently and get out. And that's, we're reworking our physical and digital processes to do that. In our DCs, we've got personal protection equipment now being deployed. We have masks. They've always worn gloves. We've got sanitizer stock that is coming in the big, we're talking 20-litre pumps, and stuff, not retailable product. And we're, because we've got to keep them safe. That is our number one responsibility, and that responsibility has not changed. And we think, without being too dramatic, New Zealanders need those guys doing their job because we need supermarkets to be fulfilling their basic function right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, I notice, some countries there might be, limitations on how often, people are allowed out to do shopping, one family member once a week, that sort of thing. But you talked about, trying to do that in a different way and encouraging the, people avoiding coming in unless they're going to really fill their basket and get what they need for a number of days. What are you finding is the best approach to share that message? And does it need, do you think it needs to come from government? How do you get that right? Because you imagine if people are getting out twice as many times as they should, mm-hmm. then we're going to see twice the infections that we might otherwise see potentially during this period, right?
Yeah. So I think there's 2 things there. What is the simple and clear message, and then what are all the channels that we should share it on? For the 4 weeks of demand overload, we really tried to get some weight behind #ShopNormal, which was a dad joke in an interview that became a thing. That helped because, the only thing I would say is I think we have a psyche that says that's a really good idea, everyone else should do it. But we don't have a psyche that says, okay, my most important role is to play my part and do it, do what I need to do. There's a bit of a, you've got to avoid the hero culture a little bit. Like, my temptation as one of the leaders in Foodstuffs would be, do I go out and pack trucks and stack shelves and do those things? I am better to do my job of organising our resourcing and prioritising and communicating and connecting for faster action than I am to load a shelf. And the other thing is we've got to try and keep the number of people, we're trying to physically operate every supermarket right now with everyone with a 2 metre bubble around them. And it's hard, right? Because it's undoing our social norms. I feel rude not shaking someone's hand, but out of respect for them, I mustn't. So it's that sort of stuff. So we've got a major role to play because we are now probably the place where the most human interactions occurs in society, which means we have to be better than anyone at implementing some sort of procedure and process and getting things done. The thing we are seeing too, of course, and this is completely expected, but the pressure and demand on online shopping is going up exponentially. We have to deliver that in a way that respects the social and safety things that we've got to do. We've got a contactless delivery process. We have temporarily paused alcohol online because, by law, we have to cite someone's ID. To get close enough to read all of that and read the date and all that stuff is just not safe. So we're not doing it. There's a few things that we have had to change and they keep rolling at us as we go forward.
Yep. So if we step back to before COVID-19 was a thing, end of last year, and we sort of walk forward to now, what point did it first become clear that you needed to, start making changes, and what did that look like at the beginning?
Yeah. So look, our planning for this, and we're not saying this in hindsight, we genuinely started about the 15th of January when people got back to work. First case in Wuhan was 10th of December, but publicity and coverage really started late December. Quite personal for me. I have a son who works and lives in China in Shenzhen. He came home for Christmas holidays on the 23rd of December. It was starting to become a thing. We were talking about it. He hasn't gone back yet. So we started talking about what did it mean? What were we seeing in other places? We started a process of going, what are the scenarios and what would we plan for those scenarios? We didn't get it perfect or complete by any means, but at least we were starting to think it through. It's very hard to prepare for the demand overload because you can't double or triple stock your DCs. They have a physical limitation. But we were talking about it. We'd started to do some work on safety practices. So not everything was a smack in the face. We had some thinking. And look, the most important thing, so the cycle we're in at the moment in terms of managing this, we went into crisis management on the 28th of February. That went for about 4 days. We then backed off to, what I'd call high care operational. And then as the situation unfolded and you could clearly see the alert level model starting to emerge, we went back to crisis management. Now we've flipped our entire management model into this is our life. We're not having a normal life and a crisis life. This is our life. Our cycle is every morning at 8:30, my leadership team get together. We talk through priority for the day, data, status, and update. 9 a.m. we have all of our store owners on a all-in call. That's regularly getting attended by 350 plus people. And it goes up to an hour, sometimes 45 minutes. We update the news, take the questions, and keep rolling. And that's proved to be effective. We're a conversational culture, but we need to use digital tools to do it now. And we're just in a good cycle of, and one of the disciplines that is really important is if a question comes up, unless you've got a clear black and white proven answer, you buy 24 hours and come back. Because rumor and half answers and all that stuff are very unhelpful right now. People are living in an ambiguous situation and they need clear data and instructions. So we're trying to stick to that. And the other thing is the beauty of our distributed leadership model and local owner model is the person best placed to go, I can see what's happening in my store. I know the principles and I can design how to apply them both physically and digitally, is the owner of that store. So we don't make too many across the board pronouncements. We stick to the principles and then deliver a local solution.
And is that partly because of your business model as a co-op? Why have you taken that that approach? Is it basically it is their business, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and they are best placed. The only thing I think we've really done across the board is our emergency services prioritization. So identification, carrying, or uniformed. You get to the front of the queue to get in the store, and you get to the front of the queue at checkout. That was, there was a lot of debate around, elderly, vulnerable, or emergency services shopping hours. My fundamental problem with that is who says you're available from 8 to 9 in the morning? And secondly, operationally, particularly in a pack and save, there are still forklifts running around the aisles putting stock out. It is not safe. So we just said, actually, what's the problem these people face? And the problem is they're shift working, they're variable hours. They want to spend the minimum amount of time doing an essential task, which is grocery shopping. And I actually really do believe New Zealanders would stand back and applaud, getting them to the front of the line. So
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that's an example of something we just decided in the centre and told our businesses that's what we're doing. Not one of them has had a problem with that. Everyone goes, yep, that's good. That's cool.
Yeah.
There are other things like physical protection at checkout. So about a week and a half ago, my property team went, we've seen this idea from overseas. We can make it happen fast. We've got the Perspex screens out. We had a factory run them for 48 hours. We've got them dispatched, couriered, and installed. Then some stores have gone, actually, what I also need is physical protection between the lanes where the lanes are back to back. So they just got builders in, built a frame, Perspex wrapped it, and gave a physical barrier. Even though the customers are back to back, this stops, another chance. So one, scientifically, it's probably valuable. Emotionally, it's really reassuring, and it's valuable for both those reasons.
Yeah. Now, because New Zealand was, a little bit behind in terms of our curve and the spread of COVID-19, what benefits has that given you in terms of being able to, see what's going on overseas and to draw from that learning rather than having to invent everything from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, and it really speaks to the role of data now. So manipulating the data to get the best flow of essential products to every store when you've got unbelievable demand has been critical. Understanding from the data what the demand and shopping pattern is and trying to plan ahead as much as possible in a very uncertain time. And then using data from, so we are a dunnhumby partner. They're one of the globe's sort of biggest retail grocery data and insight partners. They've been giving us a fantastic weekly sort of strategic view of what's happening for about a dozen retailers around the world at the different stages they are in their countries of this. And then Nielsen, another data partner, have been providing us also a global view. So we're trying to mash those things together and go, what do we think will happen next? Of course, you then get into quite cultural differences. So Italy has been in lockdown for a period of weeks. But, I'd put it to you that not many of us cook Italian style. Not many of us eat and entertain Italian style. So they have much smaller food suppliers doing much fresher food than we tend to do. So their demand pattern is different. Australia have taken a very different approach to this, and I worry for them. I really worry that they're way too loose on this and too soft. The time will tell, but I'm really worried that they're going to have a consequence way greater.
So you mean in terms of how the government is responding, or the way that the
approach to lockdown, or not really? They seem much more aligned with the US model. I fear that we're seeing a different outcome. But so look, one of the things that was great about the alert level parameters and design was it gave us certainty, because one of the hardest things is chasing different rules and knowing what's going to happen next. As soon as government came out and said, that's 3, that's 4, and this is when we're going to go to 4, it's actually taken quite a bit of urgency and uncertainty out of the business when we're going, okay, we know how to operate. Now it's focused on operational excellence and compliance and making that work. So I'm a big believer that in times like this, certainty defeats excellence. You just being perfect is not necessary. Being certain is really valuable. So pragmatism apply. So that data stream through everything is so critical. The fact that we emptied an 850-person office in about 24 hours, maybe 36 max, and basically everyone is at home working with full functionality, is a modern miracle, really. And harking back to both of our pasts, the fact that New Zealand's fibre infrastructure and general broadband infrastructure has held up pretty well. That's a credit to some design and thinking over many years. So, it was fun. I was on a call this morning and people were complaining about text and difficulty, and you go, well, use iMessage, use a messenger service, or whatever it is you choose, because analog text has been on the decline for years, and will hit a capacity issue in these conditions. The same as traditional voice calling, whereas most of the database services have been very reliable. And you actually go, yeah, that is what we've invested in for the last years in terms of infrastructure in this country. I'd imagine in telco world, there's going to be quite a lot of work going on to reassign from fat pipes out of big businesses and sole locations to supporting the residential networks. But, those guys are good at that.
Yeah, very good. So in terms of, I guess the lessons that you've learned, and for others that are going through, probably, every organisation will be dealing with pressures that are unique to their organisation. What are the things that you sort of, you feel from your learning so far should be considered by others and useful?
Yeah. Look, and our business really varies. So our retail supermarkets, demand overload. Our Gilmore's B2B business supporting cafes and bars and restaurants, last 2 days has been down 65%. So I've got a dichotomy within the business in terms of what the effect is. I think if you go back to it, first thing is make a decision as to whether you're in crisis mode or a new strategic mode, because it determines length and resourcing and sustainability of your approach. So it was pretty obvious pretty quick this was not a 1 or 2 week issue. So you go into resetting your strategy mode. Secondly, decide what the phases are going to be for your business and allocate resource to each phase. So we have a demand overload phase. We are entering a resource limitation phase. People are going to not want to work. They're going to go into isolation. They're going to, certain things we used to do won't be able to be done in terms of cooking and preparing food and things. So our resource pipeline is being limited and we need to replan for that. We can't have as many customers in a store, and as a retailer, that's, every retailer wants to have it pumping. And now we've got to go, no, the right thing to do for customers is have it quiet and everyone 2 meters apart. And then there's a third phase, which is a new way of doing business post all this. And thinking about what things will change permanently versus, go back to being the same. So you've got to allocate resource to all of the phases. Next thing that's really important to do is determine your values quickly and stick to them. So our values are short-term profitability does not matter. I think there's a perception out there that demand means we're creaming it. What people do not understand, and I don't, it's not important, is how much cost we've thrown at keeping this thing afloat. And no one has sat down and added it up nor counted it. We've just gone, do whatever is the right thing to do, throw it at it. And, I'm not asking anyone to, we're not looking for sympathy. We're just going, hey, just be aware. So, we're going safety and well-being of our staff and customers. That is the top priority. Our second priority is reassuring New Zealanders by having a level of service available that makes people not panic about grocery shopping. Our third level is these are going to be economic difficult times. People are going to need support with getting value, and we've got to play our role in doing that. And the fourth thing is we need to make sure we stay a relatively strong company able to invest in everything we do and deliver a service. So in order of priority, there are values. Every decision we make, we filter through those four.
That's great. Now, coming into this, or certainly looking at the longer term financial challenges, there must be, I'm thinking some learnings that have maybe come through from the global financial crisis. When you look back at those times, which were pretty tough too, but I guess my pick is we're on a very, very different scale here.
Yeah.
Were there some lessons that you've noticed from that period that are just helping in your mindset and your thinking?
Yeah. Look, I think, at an overall economic level, our whole system is much stronger than it was during the GFC. So from government balance sheet to banks to most companies' ability to re-strategize and reset and go. One of the fundamental differences is the speed of information right now and speed of reaction to information. We're seeing issues pop and disappear in a 24-hour period. And one of the judgment things leaders have to do right now is choose what you react to versus choose what you ignore. I chose in the last day not to do any media stuff because people have got themselves completely focused on one mispriced chicken. And you go, right, is any media attempting to add value to the situation, or are they just wanting another clickbait? You go, if it's just clickbait, I'm going to drop out for 24 hours, wait till it settles, then come back. So decisions like that are quite important because otherwise you chase things that are not value adding to chase for those 4 priorities: safety and well-being of our customers and people, and delivering the basic service to customers. So I think we've got some good things on our side, and then we've got the speed of issue sharing and development that is not on our side. I'm seeing in social media most days someone go, "There's a case of COVID at this supermarket. Oh my God." And there just isn't, and you could deploy a lot of resource to chasing every one of those rumors, or you go back and go, we know our basic processes, we know our checking, we know our instructions of staff, we know what we're doing, we're going to trust that and keep moving. Because if I take people off balancing getting the right stock to the right store and put them on to chasing that stuff, we aren't doing the best job we can for New Zealanders. So, compared to the GFC, the other thing is, we're all, I believe, running much more solid conservative balance sheets. I think people, and the reasonably good moves that the government have made around giving people some reassurance and using the government's balance sheet to deal with some of the basics. Look, everyone will have a slightly different political and economic opinion. The cool thing is we're just making decisions and putting things in play. I think one of the things, and it's a principle we'll try and stick to and chase, is keeping people employed will be key to a fast reset and a fast takeoff once this is done. So I think I'd lean towards how do businesses keep people on payroll and on deck at 80 or whatever % works to stay viable, rather than releasing whole people and then having to rehire and reset and rebuild a business. I think that's an approach we're trying to take in our business wherever we see the downwards pressure, is how do we keep people on, but in some form of lesser cost because the business can't stand the cost.
Yep.
But keep them on so that when the right time comes, we can ramp up again quickly. I think that's a principle that's well worth us continuing to consider.
Yeah, I think so. I hope we'll see a similar attitude across the country. Now, just lastly, it seems as though people are fairly united at the moment. But is there a level of sort of rousing of the troops, as it were, that that you've been able to do to encourage them, and how do you do that in a time where you can't go out and see people? You've got distance challenges. Of course, your staff in the back office, you're connected digitally to them, but you're probably a little bit more disconnected from those that are in other parts of the business and spread about the country and so on.
Yeah, look, yes, that's so. I think the key thing is keep it as authentic, as generous, and as human as you possibly can, and use the tools. So it's I have for years in different businesses always sent our note out to the entire business on a Friday. It's human, it's misspelt, it's colloquial, it's sometimes sweary, and I'm still doing that. People want their touch points still in place, so that's one. I'm seeing leaders all over our business run quite social check-ins. Trying to pick up what you did over coffee or over the water cooler or Friday afternoon and replicate that socially. there's lots of cool stories. You know, my team my leadership team, we have a private group so that people can just be themselves. And, you know, at the moment it's a 6 p.m. song of the day and 6 p.m. drink of the day. You know, and one of the members runs the Liquorland business. He's pretty good at suggesting what that drink should be. You know, it's those things. And then the other thing that, two things I keep thinking about is people say and do dumb things at a time like this because they've got pressure. And the only question that I keep coaching leaders to think about is, oh, what's going on for you? So don't react to the issue, inquire as to how you're going. Are you okay? Because 99% of the time, people are just stress reacting to the situation, to their personal fears and beliefs. And the other thing is triple down on recognition. You know, just the power of thanks, you did a great job, that was awesome right now is worth much more than it ever was.
That's awesome. Well, that's a great point to end on, Chris, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
Look, that's, all I'd like to add is we get our role in New Zealand moving through this. And we're not being heroes about that. We're in a position where we have a very important role to play, both in the safety and well-being of our staff and customers, and in having customers able to rely on this basic service that supports living through a period like this. And look, I would say almost across the board, we'd thank customers for their generosity of spirit and for their cooperation in making this happen. It's really important. And, we're only day 3 as we record this. We've got quite a period ahead of us. We need to maintain that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Oh, thank you for your time, Chris Quin.
Thank you.